All right, my guess is you don't sit around and talk about neurochemicals. So I thought we'd take less than 5 minutes to do that, but give you enough information that you would say, wow, that's pretty cool, because it is pretty cool. You and I, as I've said in other videos, are designed by God, whether you realize it or not, to be sexual beings. God is pro-sex and wants us to enjoy sex, to be intimate with one another in a context of love, in a context of marriage. We are designed physically, emotionally, intellectually, psychologically, anatomically, equipped to be sexual beings. And in addition to that, our brains, probably the most important sex organ in the body, is designed to be sexual as well. Now, what do I mean by that? We are designed as human beings to have a chemical propensity to enjoy sexuality. God intended for that to happen. The problem is, it gets distorted and misapplied in life. I look at it this way. God has provided each of us with a biopharmacy for sexuality. He has provided for us the drugs or the chemicals in our body to help us enjoy sexuality as it's supposed to be enjoyed in the context of marriage. Now, what are these chemicals? Well, these chemicals are affecting our lives on a daily basis, these neurochemicals. The first of which is one called dopamine. Dopamine is prevalent more in men, and you've maybe heard the term dopamine wash, the wash over the brain of this chemical. Dopamine elicits in us a sense of excitement when we enter into what is perceived to be risky behavior. You've seen extreme sports on ESPN, bungee jumping, people that get into gambling, risky behaviors. We call them adrenaline junkies, but in part, dopamine is a big factor in washing over the brain to cause a sense of excitement. Dopamine is meant for us to wash over our brain to turn us on to our spouse in the context of a marriage as God designed it. But dopamine, not in that context, can be incredibly destructive, to say the least. If you ever sat down at a blackjack table and you're incredibly excited about what you're about to do, and you realize you're kind of out of yourself, that you're now engaged in something that you don't want to stop, you maybe can't stop. You sat down to a video game and you start playing for hours, dopamine rush, dopamine rush, dopamine rush, reinforced by increased levels of excitement. That's dopamine. Guys are into it, and they have it. Oxytocin, a second neurochemical, is more prevalent in women. Oxytocin is what is released as a woman goes into labor, having a child, or nursing a baby. What is the purpose of oxytocin? Oxytocin in part deals with pain, but it also deals with bonding. A woman is chemically equipped to bond with another human being. Oxytocin is released when a woman feels held, when she's safe, even non-sexual touch. She's safe, she's cared for, she feels secure and special. Oxytocin is a bonding agent in the body of a woman. Vasopressin, on the other hand, is a neurochemical found in males to help them bond. Here's the thing. The more a man pursues inappropriate sexuality or multiple relationships, the dopamine causes him to want more and more and more and more. And of course, he bonds less and less and less. That doesn't work, especially when a woman who enters into sexual relationships, oxytocin is released and she wants to bond. She wants that loyalty, that fidelity, that ongoing, not only sexual, but more non-sexual romance and togetherness of bonding. And the more she engages in multiple sexual relationships, the less that oxytocin is released, and she finds herself more ashamed, weakened, and less connected than she actually wants to be or intended to be with the opposite sex. So the problem is, the very things that God gave us to work together for a happy sex life are actually working against it. Now, typically, people find that need for bonding and for excitement in the very sexuality and sexual behavior that cannot deliver it for them. And herein lies the cycle of repeated sexuality and sexual behavior, expecting something more from that experience and longer lasting than they actually are getting. And our tolerance gets raised, our stimulation gets raised, and what happens is we can't duplicate those experiences that we once experienced early on in our sexuality, and we're left wanting, we're left empty. These are neurochemicals God intended for a certain specific purpose of incredible sex life that are now, unfortunately, working against us. Something for your consideration. Let's move on deeper into this subject as we learn more on how to grow sexually.